I want you to ask yourself, what is the gospel, right? And am I a sinner? Are you a sinner? Am I a sinner? That's the bad news. That is the bad news. And I'm going to ask you these few things. Have you ever told a lie before? Right? What do you call someone who lies? A liar. Have you ever taken anything that doesn't belong to you? You ever stolen anything? Maybe a pen or pencil, something? Right? What do you call someone who steals? A thief, right? Have you ever taken the Lord's name in vain? That was part of the Ten Commandments, right? You ever taken the Lord's name in vain? What do you call someone who takes the Lord's name in vain? A blasphemer. And have you ever looked on another person with lust in your heart? The Bible says even if you haven't touched that person or touched this man or touched this woman, even if you've looked at him with your eye and you've kind of thought about them necessarily, that you've already committed adultery with that person. So even with lust in your heart, you're already an adulterer. And the Bible says if you have hatred toward another person in your heart, you've already killed them, right? That you're a murderer. So, in conclusion, this is the bad news. You are a lying, thieving, blasphemous, adulterous murderer. Just as a person, just as a body, that's the bad news. But that's only half the bad news. Here's the other half of that bad news. That in the end of all this, you're going to be standing before God, and he is holy and he is just. That's the other half of that bad news, that you are not and he is necessarily, right? And you will be judged either on your righteousness or your lack of righteousness. That, my friend, is the bad news. And look at yourself in that way. You're a lying, thieving, blasphemous, adulterous murderer in the eyes of the Lord. But the Lord has made a way. The Lord has made a way, and here's the good news. Here's the good news. That Jesus Christ, he lived a perfect, righteous life, right? In perfect obedience to God, but not for his own well-being, but for his people. He has done for you and me what you could not do for yourself. You could not stand before God and make a case to say, I'm justified by lying, I'm justified by stealing, I'm justified by being adulterous, blasphemous murderer. You can't. You're going to lose that. Now let's look at Luke 23. Let's look at Luke 23. And this is where Jesus Christ does the work for us. He stands in the gap. He stands in and he wraps his arms around you and he stands before God and gives his case to you. Let's look at Luke 23, starting with verse 1. And I only got about 5 minutes, so I'm going to hurry up through this. He says, then the whole body of them got up and brought him before Pilate, right? A Roman, still affected by Rome. And when they began to accuse him, saying, we found this man misleading our nation and forbidding to pay taxes to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ a king. So Pilate asked him, are you the king of the Jews? And he answered them and said, it is as you say. Then Pilate said to the chief priests and crowds, I find no guilt in this man. He was not guilty. He was innocent, righteous. But they kept on insisting, saying, he stirs up the people, teaching all over Judea, starting up from Galilee, even from this place, even in this far as this place. When Pilate heard it, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, whom himself also was in Jerusalem at that time. Now Herod was very glad when he saw Jesus, for he had wanted to see him for a long time, because he had been hearing about him and was hoping to see some sign performed by him. And he questioned him at some length, but he answered him nothing. And the chief priests and the scribes were standing there accusing him vehemently. And Herod and his soldiers, after treating him with contempt and mocking him, dressed him up in a gorgeous robe and sent him back to that Roman guy, Pilate. Now Herod and Pilate became friends with one another that very day, for before they had been enemies with each other. Pilate summoned the chief priests and the rulers of the people and said to them, you brought this man to me as one who incites the people to rebellion. And behold, you've explained him before me, and I find no guilt, right, in this man regarding the charges which you make against him, nor has Herod. For he has sent him back to us, and behold, nothing deserving death has been done by him. Nothing. Therefore, I will punish him and release him. Now he was obligated to release one of them, during the feast, right? One at the feast for one prisoner. But they cried out all together, saying, always with this man, away with this man, and release for us Barabbas. He was one who had been thrown into prison for an insurrection made in the city and for murder. They wanted a murderer instead of Jesus Christ to be released. Pilate, wanting to release Jesus, addressed them again, but they kept on calling out, saying, crucify him, crucify him. And he said to them the third time, why? What evil has this man done? I find in him no guilt demanding death, and therefore I will punish him and release him. But they insisted with loud voices, asking that he be crucified. And with their voices began to prevail, Pilate pronounced sentence that their demand be granted. And he released the man they were asking for, who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, but delivered Jesus to their will. When they led him away, they seized a man, Simon Cyrene, coming up from the country, and they placed the cross on him. And following him was a large crowd of the people and the women who were mourning and lamenting him. But Jesus turned to them, saying, daughters of Jerusalem, stop weeping for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming when they will say, blessed are the barren and the wombs that there never be